All right, so today I'm giving an introduction to Webpack, and it's a really deep technology, but just want to give a basic overview to kind of tell you what it is, and then we're going to look at some of the benefits that Webpack can bring to a development environment, and then also talk about some of the core concepts. And then some of the code examples of how I implemented Webpack are on this just a basic web page I created, a dad joke generator called Bad Dad, and you pretty much just click, gives you an animated text and swaps out the image there. So these are AI generated images. I know you guys are talking about it, but anyway, so I'll show you some of the code examples of the Webpack, how this page is created. All right, so first let's get started. What is Webpack? So at a high level, Webpack organizes and optimizes separate files such as CSS, JavaScript, HTML, and images in a more efficient way. It takes all of these files and their dependencies and packages them up into a neat bundle that can be easily served to the browser. So let's kind of look at a visualization, basically what Webpack is doing. It's taking all these separate files and bundling them. Webpack here is a bundler. And we kind of already do this a little bit in the sense with how we handle Sass. We have separate components, separate Sass files, and we're all compiling them using the Sass command. And if we want to minify it, we can add that minify flag, and it just kind of pops everything out into one skin.css file. So it's similar to that, only when Webpack does, you can configure Webpack to handle if you're going to output all of the CSS into one CSS file. Webpack will handle all of third-party CSS and arrange them so nothing conflicts with anything else. That's part of the magic. It has creates a dependency tree, which I don't really understand, but it's able to tell to organize the files in a way that no conflicts will happen between the different libraries and different separate files that we're using. Same thing with JavaScript. We can take all of our JavaScript files and just kind of output one big app.js file that handles all of the JavaScript minified, and it's easier, faster load for the browser. Things that we can do with some of the JPEG and PNGs, we can convert images to different types. We can optimize these images by pointing Webpack to a directory where all of our images are, and we can run an optimization algorithm on it. We can configure in the webpack.config file. I don't understand that part yet. That seems to be pretty complex, but I'm interested in learning more about that. But just wanted to let you know some things that we can do with that. So let's talk about some of the benefits that we have for Webpack. Code modularization. With Webpack, we can write and organize our code into separate modules. These modules can depend on each other and be easily managed. It helps in keeping the code base organized, and it makes it easier to maintain and update. So if we look at how we're handling our JavaScript now, nope, I have the wrong thing up there. Sorry about that. Like we have a general JS file, and all of our JavaScript arrays, everything just is dumped into this file here. And it's just kind of, it can be organized a little better. It's just kind of messy. I mean, yeah, we can write comments and everything, but just trying to get around that file and find all the different functions we're using is I don't know, it's tedious. And also everything, whether or not it's being used, is being loaded in general JS on every page of the site. So what Webpack does is that we can allows us to break up some of our JavaScript into separate components. So here I have all of the jokes in an array here, and in a file called data.js, and I just added these arrays just for example. So in our index.js file, I'm importing just the jokes array, but I could import states as well. And then I have that states array available to me in this code. The same thing with the animation. I've broken that into a module, and it uses a separate library called anime.js. That's how you get. That's how we're using these types of animations there, and it puts us in its own file. It's nice and neat. Anything relating to animation could go into this file, and we can access it through importing it. So that's code modularization in a sense. And then next is dependency management. When your code relies on external libraries or frameworks, Webpack can handle the dependencies for you. It can automatically detect and bundle all the necessary dependencies, ensuring that your application works correctly. So how we're doing it now, if we look, we usually have an include head file, and in the include structure, and we have all these different calls to different scripts, and we have to make sure that they're in the correct order, or something could break. Same thing with our third-party JavaScript and third-party CSS files like OWL carousel, and then we have our normal styles sheet. For this site, for this page, everything is output into a file called main.js. Even the CSS file, even the CSS can be read through this main.js file, and it's just one file that is included in the page, and it contains all of our code minified, and that file looks something like, pretty much like this. It's a JS file, but you can see that it has CSS in it, and the way this is configured is that when a Webpack is not outputting to a separate CSS file, it just prints it into the head section, into style tags. So sometimes we may want that, sometimes not, and we can configure that. So that's basically handling the dependency, the management there. Another benefit is efficient bundling. Webpack optimizes the size of your bundle by eliminating any unused code. This means your website will load faster because it only needs to download the necessary code. Now, a lot of times we don't minify our code. A lot of times our skin.css is just unminified, and there's a lot of JavaScript code I think that we probably aren't even using that's still being added to the page. So Webpack can do more efficient bundling and only kind of pick out and use the code that we need for whatever module that we're using. Asset optimization. In addition to JavaScript files, Webpack can handle other types of assets like CSS, images, and fonts. It can optimize these by minifying them and compressing them, further reducing the size and improving load speed. Then these are more developer-friendly features. These are more for like local development, and we don't really do a lot of local development for DNN sites. But it has like live server where you can upload, or anything you change on the spot, it just gets refreshed in the browser, and just makes things much more efficient for the workflow. Okay, next we're going to talk about just some core concepts. And so Webpack, we configure it in the webpack.config.js file. And it requires an entry point. And the entry point is where Webpack needs to know where to begin. The entry point is the main file of your project that Webpack will use to start bundling. And by default, it's located in a source directory in index.js. And we can put the path here. If we didn't want it to be that, like say we wanted it to be our assets directory in the boilerplate, we could specify that here. So it starts there and sees everything that we're importing and starts the bundling process there. And then another core concept are loaders. In Webpack, loaders are like special tools that help process different types of files. For example, there are loaders for JavaScript, CSS, images, and more. Each loader knows how to handle a specific file type and transform it into a format that Webpack understands. And so for this site, we use the CSS loader. This is example, and it looks for anything with a CSS extension, and we'll load that into the main output file. We could use a wildcard there in the beginning, and just anything ending with CSS, that would include any CSS files or SAS files, and that would be included as well. So that's the concept of loaders. And then the concept of output. In Webpack, the output is the final bundle or file that the Webpack generates. It's the result of the combining and processing all the files you've included in your project. This bundle is what you serve to the browser to display your website. So that we can specify the output file here, and it's called main.js, and that's what's being included in the index file at the bottom. All of the CSS, all of the JavaScript's included in there. So that's the output concept. And then plugins. Webpack offers plugins that allows you to extend its functionality and add additional optimizations or features. Plugins can do things like minify your code, optimize images, and much more. And we talked about that before. So if we want to try optimizing images in a certain directory, we're going to have to use a Webpack plugin and call that in the webpack.config file there. And there's only two more here. We've got dependencies and dependency graph. Now, I don't really understand this. This is like where a lot of the magic happens. It says Webpack understands dependencies between your files. It builds a dependency graph that shows how different files are connected to each other. This helps Webpack know which files to include and in what order. We talked about that before, about certain files conflict with one another. Webpack is able to detect and put all the different files in the correct order. And then there's a mode setting. By setting the mode parameters, either development, production, or none, you can enable Webpack's built-in optimizations that correspond to each environment. Default value is production. And for this, we have we're at production, and we can see that everything is nice and minified there. If we changed it over to development, you can see what and we have to kind of rebuild it. If we look at the main.js file now, we see there's a bunch of comments. We can use this to kind of debug or troubleshoot. And there's a difference in that. So for production mode, it's minified, ready, faster downloads. It's all minified and prepared for production. So that's basically just a really high-level overview of what Webpack is, some of the benefits that we talked about, and core concepts, and how those all came together in this dad joke generator. And then for the last slide, I just wanted to see if you guys want to have maybe a discussion or any questions, thoughts, ideas on integrating Webpack into our development workflow.
That dad joke website that you made looks pretty freaking cool.
I have a big my bathroom book is a book of dad jokes. So I've always liked learning new dad jokes.
Nice. So I did have a question on the compiling process. When we use like SAS Watch as part of our development process, we write our SAS code, and then we have a monitor set up to recompile the code and then automatically upload it to the dev server where we're doing our development. Is that something that you can put in some type of monitor to regularly go through and recompile and then push to a server so we can test it? Or because I think when you were going through this, you had to kick off a new npm, was it like run build or something?
That was only because I only edited the Webpack, the config file, and when you make changes to the configuration, you can do that. But in package.json, we can create some scripts, and I have build watch. That's what's running now. So if I update anything now, if I see, change that. 。 did I not push the thing? Oh, I must have not done. The watch should.
So because you changed the configuration of Webpack, that required kind of like a recycle. But once you have it in place, like to compile the code, it can regularly do that for you.
Yeah, and it was doing that today, and I'm not sure why. There, see, you change it and it goes right back. And then you can change it back to salmon again. And it goes to, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then I guess Visual Studio Code has the plugin, right, that would upload that to
Yep.
whatever else automatically.
FTP plugin we're using.
Right, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So what do you guys think? You guys think that, well, first of all, is it, like a high level overview, is it make sense kind of what Webpack is doing, or if anyone has something else to add too, that I didn't cover?
I think so. Go ahead, Laura.
I'm curious what the main differences would be between using Webpack and then like a task runner like Gulp or Grunt or something like that, and why we pick one over the other. It could just be preference.
Yeah, I did read. I don't have like the exact answer now, but it's way more. It does way more than Gulp will do. Webpack is a task runner, but it's also a bundler as well.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that Gulp. Well, from what I read, Gulp and I think Grunt was another one. I guess those aren't even being supported anymore. They're not used as much, but Webpack is still being used. And there's another one called DITE. I think it's Byte, maybe, that's starting to come onto the scene and compete with Webpack as far as a bundler goes. And it's used mostly with Vue.js, but I think that it can be used with non-Vue.js sites as well.
Okay.
Do you use Gulp, Laura?
I have.
Yeah.
Like for compiling Sass and then some post CSS plugins.
Yeah. I haven't used it, so. But yeah, I mean, the one thing is the loading the whatever files that you want to compile. That would make sense when using Webpack within like a too sexy app. But I don't know how you do that for the main theme, because you would almost have to load everything. You wouldn't know what to load, right? I mean, I guess I don't understand that part exactly, because if one page used it, you wouldn't know what page needs that JavaScript. You're going to have to sort of push all that in, right?
Yeah. So yeah, there may be a way that we can. Well, this is like, from what I was reading, there are ways. What is it? Can't remember the term they used.
Compression or compiling, or.
But in general, I think you're right that with the way we develop, we would have to, everything would be included, essentially, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that's not too far out from how we typically build sites. Like we have a general.js, we have a skin.css file. We're typically generating like those two files for the theme that we're building. And then some of the changes that we've been implementing, or that was in the more recent sites, is that we have dedicated CSS files for the individual components we're building. And that kind of breaks it up a bit from a development standpoint, and then DNN is able to look at those individually on a per page basis to build a optimized set of CSS to load, as opposed to, I think, like what you're describing with Webpack, it builds one file across all your components, all of your modules that you're designing for or coding for. So like a single page application like that works really well because they need everything all the time.
Well, and also the way I really like kind of breaking up the JavaScript. I don't know if we do enough JavaScript in our sites to really warrant that, but you know, I have some general JS files that are just, I mean, there's just huge because there's so much in it, and it's just tedious to look through. It'd be nice to be able to you know, break everything up into different modules and group like, you know, similar functions or similar array, you know, data functionality into different files, and then call what you need from each file.
I mean, I think it would work. This Webpack would work really well for the too sexy configuration, and like, so you have an app that's an accordion and an app that's tabs and cards or whatever, and maybe the cards and accordion share some of the same JS, so you have a shared folder that those can then import and compile the JavaScript that those need, but then the tabs module doesn't need something that those two need, and you can compile it. And that's sort of how all of the currently built too sexy apps, if you look at the repositories, are set up. They're all set up with the Webpack config file. I don't know if you've ever looked at that, Paul.
I haven't. I'll take a look at that.
So like they sort of how we've talked about like the NCSL project, how I brought the CSS inside of too sexy, and it's sort of complicated in figuring out how to compile it. I think that this Webpack direction could help in that whole separation of the too sexy modules as their own modules and apps, but also can be, you know, reference things from the theme or other too sexy apps when it's compiling it, and that could all be set up through those Webpacks.
Yeah, and I think building out some of that scaffolding and like the initial configuration of Webpack would be really helpful. So you have kind of all those building blocks like ready to go and start setting up your individual components or building out your theme. When you build out and set up Webpack, you have to install like the module that you want to use from Webpack on your local machine. Is that right? So if you wanted to use like an image compression, or if you wanted to be able to compile Sass, it's something that you have to download. Is that something it kind of guides you through, or like does it just like I don't know? Be curious to see like if you set it up on your machine and then I tried to pull down your repo and start to work with it, like how many pieces is it gonna fail on me for to get it to compile?
Yeah. So here's an example. A lot of stuff already comes with Webpack. So when we're adding paths, so we need to add a path to this output. So we can just require it. So we can do that same thing with the image optimization. And a lot of these, like our node modules, a lot of the third-party libraries, we can install through npm, and they're all just added to node modules directory, kind of like Gabe, what we did with CLX. We never hard coded a link to OWL carousel or anything. We just import it through or install it through npm, and then access it that way. And I think it's the same thing with a lot of plugins. I don't know, to answer your question, because I don't know exactly how to, if it's a Webpack specific plugin that's not included with Webpack. Yeah, I don't know how we get that in there, but there has to be ways, to be able to distribute a development site.
Yeah, so like that npm install is pulling down all of the libraries that you want to use, like saying, hey, we want to pull in OWL carousel, we want to pull in the Sass compiler and the image compressor, and it handles all of that through usually like one prompt, unless there's like updates it's suggesting. Yeah.
Right. So like the package JSON has all our dependencies, everything we need. And so if you would give us to Gabe, all you have to do is run at the root npm install, and then it would install all those node modules for him, and everything would be ready to go.
I feel like such a noob.
Yeah, the way it's handled is all the information's just stored here, so that you don't have to store the actual packages themselves in your repository and stuff, because that's a bunch of wasted space for no reason. But it has all the versions and everything, so you just use the one command and it gets you up to date with what you need. So
that's where your git ignore comes in to not pull down all those files or store all those files in your repo.
yeah,
All the costs you're connecting.
I pasted that link to 2Sexy app and just another example of like what Paul's showing with the Webpack config file. And like in this particular one, they're requiring a minifying CSS extraction plugin.
Yeah, let's look at the package, Jason. Yeah, so it's included here. You would install it through the npm install mini, and then it's available in the Webpack file.
So it's like, if you look at all the 2Sexy modules, if you where's all of them? Let me see. You scroll down the page, you can start to view all the different repositories that are different 2Sexy already existing modules. And a lot of these, I think, were built by 2Sexy, whatever the company, Daniel and his team. But sort of gives you an idea if you look at how they structure their stuff, how things are created. But they use a Webpack for everything.
Entry point. Yeah, I'll take a look at this and see how the relationships and everything.
Yeah, but I'm glad you shared all this, Paul, because some of this is helpful for me. I've been curious about it myself, so thanks for doing that.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool to look into some of those core features like the SAS or compiling and compressing your CSS, like something that's something we use on every project. So that's something that'd be easy to start on incorporating into the boilerplate, and then continually look to see what other tools and features can it provide, like handling some of the scaffolding of implementing like your 2Sexy code breakout, breaking out your JavaScript file into subcomponents and things like that would be good for larger projects where it might be needed or helpful.
Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our Gorilla Learning Lab. We have a lot more banana tidbits for you to get ape over. Check out our other videos or visit our website at www.10poundgorilla.com. I'm swinging on out of here.
Ooh, ooh, ah, ah. Ooh, ooh, ooh. You're not subscribed? That's bananas!